You're listening to episode number 16 of the Play Your Position podcast.
Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count. Here's your host, Mary Lou Kaser. Let's get started.
Hello everyone, Mary Lou Kaser here, and welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. I am so excited about today's episode because today is July 1st, 2014, and today is the day that one of my personal heroes in the personal branding space is launching her latest book. Her name is Sally Hogshead, and the title of her latest book is How the World Sees You. Sally is a leading authority on the science of fascination. And what I want to do today in this episode is walk you through the personality assessment journey that I've been on as a way of showcasing the power that these kinds of assessments have in our lives as we move forward, as we build businesses, as we enhance and refine and renew our careers. And one of my goals is to actually have Sally as a guest on my show today. Right now, she is super busy out there with her launch, with her speaking engagements. But if she happens to be listening, there is the invitation, because like I said, she is definitely high up there on my list of super amazing people. She's intelligent. She's dynamic. She's a great mom. She's got her head on her shoulders just right. And she is contributing tremendous value to the world. And these are all marks of mastery, which again, listeners, you know how much we all appreciate mastery in the marketplace. And in honor of Sally's book launch today, I have something really special to share with the listeners of the Play Your Position podcast. So you're going to want to stick around for that. I'm going to be sharing that at the end of the show. And it's something that Sally is giving away for free, and it is going to benefit you in more ways than you can imagine. So definitely stick around. What I want to start with is just an overview of personality assessments, because some people today, you may be listening and thinking, what are those things? Or aren't they kind of goofy or voodoo-y or, new agey? And I want to tell you that having gone through some of the big ones and having come out of them on the other side with new insights about myself, direction for where I want to take my life, the ability to communicate with people on a different level, I can tell you that they are as far from being that touchy-feely as anything. Honestly, they are as far from being new agey as anything else I've ever. These are based in science. They're based on human behavior. They're based on years and years of research that the founders of the different assessments, and often are part of teams, have gleaned these insights. And so let's go back all the way to the 1980s when I did my very first personality assessment, and that was Myers-Briggs, probably the granddaddy of personality assessments, focusing on extroversion versus introversion and intuition versus thought or thinking, and do we feel, do we judge, do we sense, do we perceive? There are a whole bunch of different combinations of those letters that a person, after taking the assessment, you get 4 letters that correspond with what you're all about. And the big takeaway for me when I took that Myers-Briggs, and I have my mom to thank for actually leading me to that, because she had taken it for her work. And it was really helpful for me to understand particularly the introverted piece. Because as an introvert, my natural state is to want to spend time alone. And I'm comfortable with that. I don't make excuses for it. But when I was a younger person, I wasn't quite sure why in certain situations I felt uncomfortable. So understanding the difference between an introvert versus an extrovert was huge and very eye-opening. And then the other pieces have played into certain things as well. But I'll tell you, for me, the Myers-Briggs, the most valuable piece of that is introvert versus extrovert. And some of you may be aware of the book that came out a couple of years ago called Quiet by Susan Cain. And this book is all about the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking. One of the big jokes of introverts is that extroverts never shut up. And many of the extroverts that I happen to know are very talkative and boisterous, and that's just part of their charm. But as introverts, we tend to be the ones that take in what's going on, not necessarily piping up at every chance we get, but rather processing and thinking. And again, on the Myers-Briggs, like many personality assessments, there's a sliding scale. So some people are extreme introverts, and then some are right kind of in that mid-range, right on the border of introvert extrovert, which is where I happen to fall. And then it goes the other opposite way for extroverts, where there's some extroverts that are leaning in towards introversion, but they're more extroverted than not. And then there's the really, really extreme extroverts who are those flashy, loud. We see them on TV a lot, and they're attracted to certain kinds of roles, and it's great. We need both. But the balance in the world, according to the Myers-Briggs findings, is that 75% of the world is extroverted and only 25% is introverted, or something like that. So there's way more extroverts running around out there than introverts. And what Susan Cain did in her book was just showcase the power that introverts have for teams, for businesses, for communities, for schools, roles that we have. She is one of the cheerleaders that I admire for the introverts. So that's my little take on Myers-Briggs. Is it valuable? Absolutely. Is it the be-all, end-all to the personality assessments? No. I'm a firm believer that you don't just take one thing and leave it at that. Now, there weren't a whole lot after Myers-Briggs for me. It wasn't until, we're going to fast forward into the 2000s, really 20 years later, when I was introduced to my second really powerful personality assessment, and that is called Strengths Finders. This was developed by the Gallup organization. Marcus Buckingham really led the charge here. Really, really powerful way of looking at what are your top 5 strengths. And he tended to see things through the lens of corporate America and the business world. I found my top 5 strengths not only insightful, but also affirming. And I think at the end of the day, the value that these personality assessments can have for us is that affirming piece, that you realize that you're not alone. You're not the only one that has this particular way of looking at things or way of thinking about things. And that sense of belonging to a community, I think, is valuable. And it has been for me. And what Strengths Finders like Myers-Briggs did was it gave me ways of looking at myself, and it gave me some language that I could use when I was talking about myself. Again, super, super valuable. So after Strengths Finders, not long after that, I was introduced to the color code, which was created by Dr. Taylor Hartman, who I now feel very honored to call a friend. And what Taylor has done with the color code is he looks at how each of us has one particular motivation that drives us. And he broke it into 4 different colors. There's red, blue, white, and yellow. And each of those colors corresponds to something that drives us, that we each came out that way, and there's nothing you can do to change that dominant drive, but you can become more charactered in the other 3 of your less dominant or non-existing colors. So reds are driven by power and getting things done. They are the A to B's of the world. Blues are motivated by and driven by forming communities and connecting with other people on an emotional level. Yellows are all about fun. They are the social butterflies. They are driven by the next engagement that's going to be an exciting event. They hate to miss a party. And then the whites are the peaceful ones, the Buddhas of the world, the ones that take everything in and are motivated by harmony. And I happen to be a white, so what drives me is having peace and not having conflict. Again, really, really insightful. When I discovered this and I read about the different colors, and again, along with the other assessments, understanding what drives me was super valuable, because not only was I able to then adapt to other colors, but I could actually start speaking the language of the other colors. And that's where the strength of the color code has come in and will come in. So I would recommend looking into that one if you haven't heard about it. And like every episode, the links to the things that are discussed on the show can be found over at maryloukaser.com/podcast. Just click on episode 16. It'll take you right to the page and you can find links to all these different amazing assessments to learn more about them. And then you can decide if they're things that you would like to take a step further and use for yourself. Next after that, almost 10 years later, I didn't do any personality assessments for almost 10 years until last year in 2013, I was introduced to the Kolbe Index, and Kolbe is Kolbe. What the Kolbe Index measures is what a group of people will and won't do well. So if you're managing a team or you're working in a team and you understand what the other members of that team or group with their Kolbe index is, you can make sure that people are in the right roles. And this was really eye-opening to me. I had not looked at my conative strengths. That's CONATIVE. And what they've done at the Kolbe organization is that they have proven that when people are managed according to those conative strengths, they will excel. And if they're forced into working in any areas that are contrary to those conative strengths, you're going to have an amazing amount of stress. You're going to have people who are miserable, who are unproductive, and in some cases are going to be in a sabotaging role because they are just miserable. Even though I work for myself, and I have for quite some time, I do, on many occasions, I do work outside in groups if I'm facilitating a team or I'm leading a workshop or I'm working with other entrepreneurs. Understanding Kolbe is really, really valuable because I can articulate what I'm best at and avoid what I'm not good at. And at the end of the day, that's what you want. And using the play your position theme, it's kind of like saying that an offensive lineman now needs to play quarterback. Total mismatch. Going to be miserable. Going to be uncomfortable. You know, an offensive lineman's body is usually in the upper 200s, lower 300s. They're really, really tall, they're broad, and they're not fleet of foot. And in order to be a quarterback, you've got to be a little bit more nimble and lean and maybe not the tallest guy on the team, but you've got a great eye for how to manage the game, and you're somebody who can throw the ball on a rope. I mean, these are the things that when you know where you fit in, what you're good at, and you can articulate these things, you are going to be able to be far more successful than if you're walking around in a fog or in ignorance because you've never heard of the tests or you never bothered to take them. Again, I encourage you, if you're listening today and you haven't done a personality assessment in a while, and any of the ones I've mentioned so far sound intriguing, head on over to maryloukaser.com/podcast, click PYP16, and you'll find links to the ones that I've been talking about. So all of these personality assessments that I've shared with you today are leading up to the latest one that I just took 2 months ago in May when I first found out about it. And this is probably the one that has tipped it over the edge for me. And I mentioned at the beginning of the show that one of my personal heroes, Sally Hogshead, has her official book launch today for her newest book. And as part of that launch, between now and July 24th, Sally is giving away free access to her $37 personality assessment. And I'm going to give you a special code that you can use to go take that test for free. Now, I was only given 100 of these codes, so you're going to want to take advantage of it. You have until July 24th to go over there and do it. And I am more than willing to promote Sally and her work because already I've noticed huge difference in the way that I'm communicating my value to the world, because that's what Sally's Fascination Advantage is all about. It's how the world sees you. It's what value do you bring to the marketplace and how do you articulate that? So if personality assessments have been on your radar, or if you've done all the ones that I've done, starting with Myers-Briggs and going through the Strengths Finders and the Kolbe and the Color Code or the DISC or any of those other ones that may have crossed your path and you're looking for the latest one, you're definitely going to want to take advantage of Sally's offer. She is tremendous in terms of the science that's behind this assessment, the years of work that she and her team have put into figuring out the 49 different archetypes, and then the different kinds of languages that you can be using when you're putting together your resume, or you're in a networking event and need to speak about yourself, or you're pitching your company or service to someone else. You could do some research ahead and try to get a sense of what they might be in terms of archetypes, and then work your archetype into that. Because effective communication, as we all know, isn't about us. It's about who we're communicating to. And that's something that we forget all the time. I know I do it. And when you're writing copy, when you're posting on social media, when you're in a conversation with a new person, next time you find yourself in one of those situations, see if you can step outside yourself and listen to how much of the conversation are you directing towards yourself and how much are you directing towards the other person. Are you truly trying to do what Stephen Covey taught, which is first seek to understand and then to be understood? So make it about them first versus making it about you first. And believe me, I've been to so many networking events where the new people that I've met can't wait to tell me all about what they've got going on and really couldn't care less about me or what. Don't ask me any questions, hear me say something and immediately dismiss it. And that's okay. That's just the way the world works. What I'm suggesting and what I'm encouraging people to do is figure out how you can turn the tables so you're the one in the room that people remember because you listened, you made it about them, and you talked their language. Furthermore, you were able to articulate really succinctly what value you could bring to what they're doing. That's the key, and that's the gift that Sally is giving us. So the code, I'm going to tell it to you, but you can find it on the page. The code is capital B as in boy, capital L as in love, then dash or hyphen, little m as in Mary, little l as in love, K as in kangaroo, A as in apple, Y as in yak, E as in elephant, and R as in ribbon. So that's BL-ML Kaiser, and you're going to go over to this website, howtofascinate.com/you. That's YOU. So howtofascinate.com/you. Put the code I just gave you, BL-ML Kaiser, in there. You'll have to put in your email address and create a password, but then you'll have free access to Sally's amazing assessment. There's only 28 questions. It's not going to take you that long, and then you'll get your archetype. Once you know your archetype, I'm going to ask a favor of you. If you'd be so kind, come back to MaryLouKaiser.com and click on my blog, and the latest post I've got up there is all about Sally. Just click on that post, and in the comment section, would you be willing to share what archetype you happen to be? My archetype is the secret weapon, and I'm just curious to see if there are other secret weapons out there and what other archetypes are in the listening audience of the Player Position podcast. So if you're willing, if you find out your archetype, head on over to that post on my blog and share your archetype with the world. So this brings us to the end of another episode of the Player Position podcast. It has been so much fun today to share with you the journey of personality assessments that I've gone on, and perhaps I've stimulated in you a curiosity about what Sally's work is all about, or some of the other personality assessments I mentioned. And if you've taken them all and you already know, that's fantastic, because you are well equipped to be communicating with all kinds of people, not only in their language, but putting yourself in the best light that you possibly can. And ultimately, isn't that what we all want, is to get out there and play our best game every single day? When we suit up, we hit the field, we know that we're not distracted, we're not thinking about something else, we're not wondering, why am I here? But we're there, we're focused, and for the next 60 minutes of our lives, we are giving it our all. That's all anybody can ask of us, isn't it? And that's all that I ask of myself each day. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Player Position podcast. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. In the meantime, make it a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Player Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count at MaryLouKaiser.com.